Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be making one of these lovely little wallets. It's a very simple wallet with just one little pocket and a popper to fasten it. It will only take you about 10 minutes to do, and you only need one piece of fabric and one piece of interfacing and a little fastener. If you don't have any of these little snap fasteners, if you don't have any of these, you could just sew a pressed on. It's entirely up to you. Anyway, let's get started. Cut one long continuous piece of fabric 19 inches by 4 3/4 inches and a piece of interfacing 18.5 inches by 4 1/4 inches. Next, fold your interfacing in half and find a small round object to draw around to round off the corners. I'm using my spool holder because it's exactly the right size. Draw around your small object with a pen. I'm using a friction pen, but it really doesn't matter here because you're going to cut these corners off anyway and nobody's ever going to see that pen mark, so any pen will do for that. Next, apply your interfacing to your long piece of fabric on the wrong side, following the manufacturer's instructions. I'm using a woven interfacing because I prefer that, but you can use any interfacing you like. Now we need to mark our fabric before folding it. The first mark we put is at 6 1/4 inches and we need to mark both sides. Then we need to go to the other end of the fabric and mark 6 1/4 inches from that side, and again mark it on both sides. So you want 6 1/4 inches from the top and put a mark on each side. I'm marking on my interfacing because I've got a dark fabric and a dark pen, and it's the only way my marks will show up. All the marks that you make will be within the seam, so don't worry too much, you can use any pen you like. The next mark we're going to make is 3 1/4 inches from the mark we've just made. So 3 1/4 inches towards the centre of the fabric from the mark we've just made. So we have the first one at 6 1/4 and then the next one at 3 1/4, and then we should have 3 1/4 inches between the next mark. Unfortunately, I don't. I have only got 2 1/4, so I'm going to have to check my first measurement of 6 1/4, which in fact is 7 1/4, so I'm going to redo it. Luckily, I'm using my friction pen, so I can iron away the marks that I don't need and just leave the ones that I do. This is how your marks should look. As I'm going to need to see the marks on the other side, I'm just pinning through my fabric, so I've got a little bit of mark on the other side. These marks are only for folding, and once you've folded you don't need them anymore, so I'm just putting pins in now so that I can fold on the right lines. If you have got dark fabric, you will need a light colour pen or chalk, but unfortunately I don't seem to have one that works. But whatever the problem, there's usually a way to get around it. First, fold the fabric on the first mark, the 6 1/4 mark. So with right side spacing and the wrong sides on the outside, make a fold on the 6 1/4 mark. Then fold the fabric down on the next mark and put a crease in it. Then fold the fabric back up on the next set of marks. So you should end up with something like this. When you've got all the folds in the right place and everything is lined up, get your iron and give it a quick iron. Then either clip or pin, ready for sewing. You only need to pin or clip the two sides, not the bottom edge, and we're going to leave a gap in the top edge as well. So clip down the sides and we're going to leave an opening at the top, which we're going to mark. Again, I'm using my friction pen, a small opening of about 2 inches. I realise here that my interfacing isn't quite straight across the top, and as I'm using the interfacing as a guide for sewing, it's the only one that I cut round. I haven't cut the fabric round, so I'm using the interfacing, so I'm going to put a mark on it to level it off, and I'm going to follow the line rather than the edge of the interfacing. And it's best to get it right before I sew. And we're going to sew up both sides, leaving the opening at the top. We mustn't sew across the bottom edge, leave that open. So just the side where the clips or pins are, and leave the top open. At your sewing machine, start by sewing down one of the sides. We're going to take 1/4 inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start, So all the way along till you get to the corner, and then when you get to the corner, follow the edge of the interfacing, as that is the bit that we've cut round. We haven't cut the fabric round, just the interfacing, so follow that interfacing round the corner. Then just sew to that mark that we left for the opening and back tack. Lift your needle and press a foot, and then cut off your threads, and then start again at the other side of the mark we left for the opening. So we're starting on the bend this time. So back tack and then very carefully go around the corner, taking your time, and then carry on all the way down to the end, taking your 1/4 inch seam allowance and back tack when you reach the end. Next, clip the corners and trim off any loose ends. So trim off your loose ends first, and then I like to clip the bottom corners just like one side, so I just go down to a point at the corner. Then I trim off the excess fabric on the rounded corners, and then I'm going to clip these corners. So basically I take just the end part of my scissors and clip into the seam, but don't cut the seam. Just clip as close to the seam as you can get, but don't cut through those stitching. If you cut through the stitching, it will all come undone, which we don't want to happen. Next, we need to turn the wallet the right side out. So through the opening that we left along the top edge, gradually pull the fabric out through that opening until eventually all the fabric is on the right side. You will then need something pointed, like a knitting needle or something, to push out the corners. I have a special tool. If you've got a special tool, that's great. If not, use something like a knitting needle and just push out the corners and the curved edge. And then make sure that the opening is nicely turned under, and give a good press with a nice hot iron. Next, top stitch all the way around your wallet, taking an 1/8 inch seam allowance, back tacking at the start and the finish. So all the way round, taking care as you go around the corners. Cut off any loose threads with a pair of snips or a small pair of scissors, and then iron the flap down in the correct position, because we're going to put a fastener on next. I'm going to use a cam snap. This is what the fasteners look like. You get what looks like a bit like a thumbtack. The top left hand corner is one side of it and the bottom left hand corner is the other, so it just looks like a thumbtack. And then on the other side of that you've got a male or a female fixing. You need a male on one side and a female on the other side, and they clip together. First, find the centre of your wallet, and then we're going to attach our first fastener on the flap. So find the centre and make a hole, and then thread the side through that looks like a thumbtack, and it will come out the other side. Then put either a male or a female fixing onto that, and then using the clamp provided, press it into place. You need to put a fair amount of pressure on it in order to squash that little pointy bit that sticks up. You need to squash that flat, and then it holds it in place. Although don't press too hard or you can actually break them. To make a mark on the other side of the wallet where you want the other side of the fastener to go, I usually get it lined up and then I push down really hard on the side I've already put in, and it should make a little bit of a mark on the other side so you can see where to make the hole. And if you look very carefully here, you should just about be able to see the indentation that it left. So I find the centre of the mark that it left, and then using the tool provided, I make a hole. I then thread the part of the fastener that looks like a thumbtack through from the inside of the wallet. Then on the outside of the wallet, I put either a male or a female, depending on which I used on the other side, on top of the little spike that sticks out, and then using the tool provided, I squash the two together, and this will seal them together. Put plenty of pressure on to make sure that it works. And that's our fastening finished. They should clip together nicely. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the video and you'll manage to make one of these little wallets. If you haven't already, could you please like and subscribe? Thank you very much. See you next time.